everything before this, everything we've designed, everything we're going to build, everything we're doing is strictly designed to help you achieve that thing, right? Versus, well, no, we're going to set up some Facebook ads. Okay, but that's not what the client wants. The client doesn't want Facebook ads. They want a purchase. They want leads. They want whatever is the outcome that matters to them.
Welcome to the Agency Profit Podcast, a show dedicated to going deep space on agency operations, which is just as nerdy as it sounds. I'm your host, Marcel. I'm the CEO of Parakeeto, a firm that helps digital and creative agencies measure and improve their profitability. Join me as I interview some of the smartest thought leaders and agency owners in our space and go deep into operations, metrics, and all the other things you need to get right so you can spend less time worrying about operations and more time executing on your vision. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Agency Profit Podcast. I'm excited today to be joined by my friend Mikael Dia from Funnelytics. He is a former agency founder turned SaaS entrepreneur and digital marketing expert. And we're here today to talk about how visualizing complex things, in particular digital marketing funnels and reporting, and that concept can be really powerful to the client experience, to client retention, client satisfaction, all the things that are essential to making sure clients are happy and stick with you for a long time. So excited to dive into this. And with all that, Mikael, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Marcel. Man, I'm looking forward to a conversation. Hopefully we can jam out and talk about a lot of fun stuff.
Well, I'm sure that we can, because you have a very relevant experience to a lot of people that are listening to the show. You have had several businesses across several different industries. You were in the nutrition space. You then started a digital marketing agency. And now, of course, you run Funnelytics, which is mostly a software company, although you do still have some services as part of your business model. So why don't we start there? How did you come to start Funnelytics? And in your own words, what do you do and who do you serve?
Yeah, before I even had, I was in the kind of nutrition space and the agency. I actually was in the language space, and I used to run a Mandarin school in London in the UK. And that kind of is what started the whole entrepreneurial venture. And no, I don't speak Mandarin. No, I've never been to China, but I thought that it would be a good idea to sell people on Mandarin lessons in the middle of the UK. So but really what I did there is I applied a lot of the learnings that I had around digital marketing, right? Like I became obsessed with the idea of how do you take a stranger to become a customer, right? All of the different nuances associated to conversions, traffic, and optimization, and funnels, and follow-ups, and persuasion, and copywriting, and all of those things, all of those pieces. And I applied it to the school, and we grew that, and we did well with it. And I decided that it would be cool if I did this for other people, right? Like, and what was interesting while I was running my agency was every time I would use a whiteboard and like visualize a strategy with like a flow, like a diagram, right? A square, circles to kind of indicate like, all right, well, we're going to get some emails, and those emails are going to go to this page. And then the goal of this page is to get somebody's name and, phone number or whatever. And it goes over here, and then they go to a thank you page. And the minute I would draw this, all of the clients or the prospects would, number one, be way more attentive, but they would see me as, oh man, this guy knows what he's talking about. But more importantly, I know what the hell he's talking about. Like I can see it, I can visualize it, I understand what it means, right? So I started adopting that in all of my pitches, all of my proposals. Anytime I would speak to a client, whether it would be in person, I'd be like, do you have a whiteboard? Do you have a piece of paper? Like, let me just show you what I'm talking about. Or I would do it using a PowerPoint presentation with, arrows. And I actually went on Fiverr, got little icons, a little icon pack made for like $5 of like pages. This is a sales page, and this is a webinar page, and this is a little, these little icons, and the Facebook icons and all that stuff. And I would put in my presentations, and it was so easy to walk people through the idea. And then what was really even easier was then I would throw numbers to that. And I would say to them, look, if we're able to drive this much traffic, from this icon to this page, and 10,000 people go here, and from this page to this page, I would be able to put a 20% and show you 20% of the people go there. cool, we end up with 200 people over on this step or whatever the numbers may be, right? So I would show them this with these kind of visual forecasts, these metrics, and instantly that would make them understand, oh, this is how I can make my money, right? This is how this thing is actually going to make me money. This is the ROI behind this thing. And that would close the deal. But then came the challenge of actually proving that my strategies were working. So it's one thing to visualize a strategy and to kind of forecast a profit or forecast results. It's another thing to then actually this is what's actually happening. These are the actual numbers. So I had to, do what everybody else does, set up tracking and have Facebook and have Google Analytics and have the website tracking and build a couple spreadsheets and try to calculate all this and build these dashboards for these clients. And there was this massive disconnect. It was interesting to see the client's reaction to the reports because I sold them on this picture, this visual thing. And then the reports are like charts, graphs, tables. They're like, I don't know. Is it working? Is it not working? Like, I can see we spent this much. I can see we made this much, but what are you guys doing next? And that's where the idea for Funnelytics came from. It came from this need of man, wouldn't it be cool if I could just overlay my data on top of my strategy on a canvas in the exact same way that I've been selling these clients? And yeah, that's where this whole idea of visualizing data and visualizing funnels and strategies came from.
It's it makes so much sense. I think you and I share this philosophy of using visual communication and drawing things and co-creating things with clients in real time as a way to improve the communication. And it's a fundamental concept in adult learning theory that visualization and drawing in particular is a really critical part of how adults understand and make sense of complex problems. And so it's why I draw so much on my iPad, and everybody listening to this would know that I love to do that. We come from a similar world in having known Dan, and I think we both picked that up from him. And he says this all the time, but I'm pretty sure he got it from Simon Bone, which is when you draw people in. And I think that's the experience that you had, right? Selling to people and then communicating with them afterwards with this visual format. And just for context, for those that are listening that have never seen Funnelytics, I'll do my best to describe what the platform looks like. It's really cool. If you think about if you ever use a tool like Miro or a mind mapping tool, imagine that, but instead you can actually build a funnel and then actually go and connect all the analytics from Facebook and Google and from landing pages and see the numbers that you would typically report to a client on, but in this visual canvas, and move them around and connect dots between them. And so to me, it's really interesting because I find myself doing this in Miro all the time, saying, oh, we're going to build a new funnel. That's the first thing that I need to do to make sense of it, is go and map out okay, what are the pieces? How do they connect? Where's the flow of data? So it's a really cool product. And if you've never seen it before and you're listening to this, I encourage you to go check it out because conceptually it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I appreciate that. It was interesting going through the process though, because man, I learned a lot in terms of building. First of all, a SaaS is not the same as building an agency. I was very naive in terms of what it takes to build a software. I was like, oh, let's just hire a developer that I don't know who maybe is good. Hey, buddy, I want this canvas that allows me to map stuff, but then I want to be able to put data on it. Can you do that for me? and that's kind of how it started. So I really knew nothing. But what was interesting is the evolution of understanding what are you using the communication for, right? So it's you're right. 65% of all people are visual learners. At the end of the day, we're just slightly more intelligent monkeys. We like to see pictures and drawings, and it just makes more sense. However, when you think about what are you using it for and what are you visualizing? Are you trying to communicate a plan and a strategy? Are you trying to communicate data? Are you trying to communicate results? Are you trying to communicate what you're going to do next, or where the problems are? And that's something that we had to kind of figure out as we built the SaaS. But the underlying theory or underlying benefit is we show you visually what's working, what's not, and we show you the strategy in a visual way. right? That's really what it comes down to.
So there's two things that I would love to unpack today. One is the impact that leaning into this more visual way of communicating both pre and post sale impacted your agency. So we tie this back to, of course, profitability, client retention, all those things. And then I do think that a lot of people in our audience would probably be curious to know what your biggest lessons learned were from transitioning from an agency into a SaaS, and maybe where some of the landmines are and all of that. So why don't we start with the first one? At a high level, like when you really started leaning into this visual communication, what did you notice the biggest impacts were to your agency that led you to want to continue to double down on this and eventually build a product around it?
Oh man. So on two fronts, on the sales front and then on the retention front. So on the sales front, just super fast closing times. That was the biggest thing. Like the difference between I'm shopping around and I'm looking for the best price to, exactly what you're talking about. I'm going to sign up with you. And price is a little bit less relevant, right? So those two things really had that impact, because the problem is when you start listing services, people instantly start comparing to other services. When you take a visual diagram or strategy and you visualize it, it becomes almost like an entity, right? I like to, I learned this from Dan Martell too, like just basically putting TM on everything, right? So like, and what's interesting is it's almost like when you put a TM next to, a product or whatever your framework or whatever it is, it creates this productization aspect in the customer's mind. Well, visualizing a diagram or visualizing a strategy kind of creates that same thing. Normally what you would see is, well, we're going to do 3 Facebook posts, and we're going to do that every month, and we're going to create a blog post, and we're going to run some ads, and we're going to build your landing page for you, and we're going to redesign your website. It's like, cool, you just listed a whole bunch of stuff. How much is that worth? And what does this other person charge for the exact same list of things? However, when you actually visualize it in a strategy on a diagram and you say, well, actually, these Facebook posts all go to this page, and this page is actually designed to put people over to this page. Now, all of a sudden, it feels like this whole thing is designed to get me the result that I care about. So that instantly sparks in that client's mind. And now they see you as completely different. You're no longer a commodity. You're actually positioning yourself as somebody who has a system to actually deliver the result that they care about. And you can communicate that, which, number one, allows you to price it at a higher, like I said, but also reduces the close time because they're no longer shopping around. They have no one to compare to, right? At the end of the day, because they're buying this picture in a sense, right? Versus buying this itemized list of things. So those are probably the two biggest things I've seen on the sales side. On the retention side, it really comes down to when you can pull back that same strategy, that same visual that you sold a client on, and you can put numbers, or you can put, like, the only way you're going to retain clients at the end of the day is if you get them results, right? Either you're going to do an incredible service where it would be really, really hard for them to replace you because you're the most amazing designer or copywriter or whatever, or at the end of the day, you're getting them results. And that's what they really care about. So your job is, how can I communicate the results, or how my strategy, my efforts are contributing to the result they care about? And if it's not, how can I communicate to them what I'm doing to fix it, right? What I'm doing to improve it or make it better. And again, if all you're doing is giving them a list of, oh, well, this month we ran $10,000 a month on Facebook ads, and you got 15 clicks or 1,500 clicks to your site, and we got 75 leads. It's like, okay, fine, but like, is that good? Is that bad? What are you doing next? How do we get to our target? And when you can, again, visualize that diagram, that picture, and say, here's the bottleneck right here. Like, this is what we're going to work on next, because if we can optimize this, and this is how we're going to optimize it, we can increase these results. That's where the retention comes in. So always communicating around that same picture is what makes it super easy.
This all makes sense on both sides. And the thing that I keep thinking about is, in another life, excuse me, in another life, I don't know if a lot of people on this show even know about this, but we met at SaaS Academy. I spent a considerable amount of time coaching in SaaS Academy, and SaaS Academy has a bunch of software founders in that program. And the thing that they find most confusing is marketing. Of all the disciplines within their organization, marketing is the thing that people seem to be the most overwhelmed and confused about. And the analogy that I've kind of really come back to over and over again in speaking to founders there is this feeling of, you learn about all of these things, landing pages and email marketing and advertising and retargeting and SEO and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, social media. And it just feels like you're getting all of these puzzle pieces dumped in front of you, but no one has ever shown you the image on the front of the box.
Yeah, I use that analogy a lot too.
Right. And so I think that's probably how a lot of prospects feel when you list off a bunch of services. You're like, here's a bunch of puzzle pieces. And they're like, okay, but I don't know how to put these together.
Correct.
And when you visualize a funnel and you say, okay, so we're going to run an ad and it's going to go to this landing page. And then from the landing page, it's going to go into this form, and the form's going to go into your CRM. And then we're going to send them emails, and they're going to have a sales call. And these are the percentages. And this is how we get you the 10 clients that you want per month by doing all these other things. They can literally see how those puzzle pieces fit together. They see the image on the front of the box. And importantly, the image on the front of the box is a map from where they are today to where they wanted to be. And that is such a powerful idea. And I think the idea of then carrying that into the client relationship thereafter and layering progress and how you talk about where your focus is on top of that very real image is powerful. And it's powerful because clients don't know what we know. It's so easy to forget that. I'm guilty of it all the time too, right? We know so much and we forget how much we know, and we forget how little people that have never really done marketing before know about this stuff. So it makes complete sense that you felt like this had a really transformational impact on the way you were interacting with clients, how much they trusted you, how much value they felt they were getting, and so on.
Yeah, it's an interesting psychological thing that we do, and I think one thing I will say to everybody listening is what Marcel mentioned there as listing off these individual services. The biggest win you can have in 2025 and beyond is you can't go and start selling individual services if they don't connect to a bigger strategy that gives the client the result that they care about. So for example, SEO, like, okay, great, I've got 1,000 pages ranked on Google. Like that's my promise to you. It's like, okay, what does that mean? Like, well, a certain percentage of those people will become leads. It's like, okay, so are you making sure that my website converts that traffic? If not, then you're just helping me rank, and I can get that anywhere, right? I can get that service on Upwork for $10 an hour, right? So the biggest thing that you should be thinking about as an agency is, how do I visualize the strategy to the end outcome? So one thing I always do, and whenever I sell a service, is I will always start, like, the first icon I will map on the canvas is always going to be the conversion action that I'm trying to get people to do. So whether it's a purchase, booking a call, filling out a form, going into a deal pipeline, like, what is the thing that we are ultimately accountable or responsible for driving with this strategy? And then I'm going to look at all of the other pieces so that I can explain to the client, like, this is the outcome you care about. Everything before this, everything we've designed, everything we're going to build, everything we're doing is strictly designed to help you achieve that thing, right? Versus, well, no, we're going to set up some Facebook ads. Like, okay, but that's not what the client wants. The client doesn't want Facebook ads. They want a purchase. They want leads. They want whatever is the outcome that matters to them.
Do you want some free resources to help you measure and improve your profitability? If you do, then I want to tell you about our agency profitability toolkit, which you can grab absolutely free in the show notes or by heading to parakeeto.com/toolkit. It's packed with training videos, cheat sheets, templates, and all kinds of other great resources to help you start measuring and improving the essential metrics that are going to drive better profitability in your business. And it's helped thousands of other agencies around the world do the same. So I want to encourage you to go and grab a copy of that. And if you'd rather get in the fast lane and just have our team of experts guide you through the process of measuring and improving your profitability, then I want to encourage you to apply for a consultation at parakeeto.com. And with that, I want to thank you again for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the episode, and I'll let you get back to it. So with all of this said, I encourage people to think about this, maybe try this out. And I would encourage you to check out Funnelytics. It's a really great way to do this, not only in the sales process, but then also afterwards, being able to layer and visualize analytics on top of this. So for those that do want to check out Funnelytics, where should we send them in the show notes to go and check that out?
Yeah, just funnelytics.io, and you can sign up and play with our platform. We've got some really cool interactive demos where you can play with the platform for free and use like some cool dummy data and stuff if you want to show clients. So yeah, it's fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, there'll be a link in the show notes to that. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit and just kind of talk about the journey of going from, a 7-figure agency owner to I'm going to start a SaaS company.
Yep.
Because the grass is always greener. And we've seen that movie many times before. I think there's a lot of founders listening that might have had a similar insight. And you've been successful with Funnelytics, but as you mentioned, there were some big learnings along the way. So if you had to impart some wisdom on somebody that wanted to go down a similar path, what are some of the more important things that you would say?
Oh my man. I think we need another like 3 hours for this podcast because there's so much. No, like I think the first thing is you have to know where your strengths and your weaknesses are as the founder, and you have to understand who you need to partner with. The truth is, like, so I'm a solo founder. I don't have any co-founders, and that was probably, especially on the software, one of the bigger mistakes that I made, right? Because especially on the technical side, I don't know how to write a single line of code. Now, AI is making that easier for us these days, and that's super helpful. But I've never written a line of code in my life, and I decided to build an analytics platform that helps you visualize on a canvas. It's like sometimes you need to realize where your limitations are and find that person who can complement that side. Because just hiring developers, although I was fortunate and lucky, and the developers I hired were great, still having somebody who's ultimately accountable and just as involved in that side is going to be very, very important, and understand where your expertise is. Next is, which is something I did relatively well, solve a problem that you have, right? Like as a founder, your best option, if you want to know the market really, really well and get off the ground quickly, is solve a problem that you have as a founder, at least from a high level. But then the next step is don't have too much of an ego to think that you're the only one who can solve that problem, or everybody else has no feedback as to how they approach that problem. Because you may have a solution in your mind as to here's how I'm going to solve this problem. And it is a problem, and many people face that problem, but you keep going down this rabbit hole of I don't need feedback per se because I know what the problem is, right? I'm the person who's trying to solve this problem. So I think one of the mistakes we made with Funnelytics is in the early days, I was so fixated on building my vision of what this product should be that even though we were getting a whole lot of feedback from clients, I was prioritizing that feedback not based on the business, but based on what I wanted the product to do, right? Which, big mistake. Many of these features that are still sitting there, nobody uses. I do, but nobody else uses. So great. We wasted a whole lot of development resources and money and time and all that. So those are a couple high level things if you're just getting started.
Really good words of wisdom, and I'll second both of those. So start with the engineering side. I've also been very lucky that, I've had really good engineering support and, co-founders in this business since the very start. And it's funny. I say this to people all the time. Like, I used to think that software engineers were like the smartest people in the world. Then I started working with them, and I figured out that they were 10 times smarter than I thought they were. And it's amazing how in software engineering, what I've come to understand is that it is just compromises. Everything is a compromise. Everything is held in this tension of we can do it faster, we can do it well. You can never accomplish those two things at the same time, it seems. And there's always these architecture questions that, like, I mean, AI is so far away from being able to solve those kinds of things. Like writing code to make a thing like do A, B, and C, that's the easy part. But considering the architecture, will it scale? How does this coincide with the other features that we might build before? What are all the dependencies? What's the sequencing that's going to make the most sense so that we can be efficient at deploying these features and not having to go back and rebuild and retool things, but also trying not to do these big monolithic deployments because that's risky in and of itself. And so like engineering's crazy. And yeah, I would really encourage people to not underestimate the value of having someone senior that's invested in the success of the company and is incentivized to actually be thoughtful and balanced about those compromises, because a development shop is not. They're incentivized to make it work the way that you meet your requirements very literally as quickly as possible, and kind of ignore all of the future problems with scale and architecture and efficiency and security and redundancy. You know, not every dev shop is going to be like that, but you have to think about the incentives, and very easy to fall into that trap of like, I built the thing and it does what it's supposed to do, but this now has like a 3-month shelf life and you're gonna have to completely rebuild it when you release these two other features that, you know, are architected differently. Anyway, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but it's definitely a
Not
big
really,
thing.
other than you're 100% correct. And you don't take that lightly. If you're an agency owner, the reason you're going, the likelihood that you're an actual developer is very low. You're most likely starting a software because you want to solve some sort of marketing problem, or maybe it's a sales problem, or I don't know, whatever industry. Um, but the thing that you're most likely really good at if you're an agency owner is marketing, right? That's the whole reason you run an agency. So stick to your zone of genius, but partner with somebody who can do the other stuff, and do it to the same dedication and drive that you do, with the future in mind, as you kind of mentioned. Because yeah, dev shops are not the right people, and contracted developers are really very similar in that mindset. So
Yeah. What I'll say is, like, I don't think there's anything fundamentally wrong with using development agencies as leverage, but I think it is important that someone within your four walls is involved and is able to kind of manage that process purely from an incentives perspective, for anything beyond what is just like a proof of concept, essentially. Um, that's my hot take. Now, the second thing that you mentioned, which I think is very, very important, and I have a pretty strong thesis around this, is like the idea of solving a problem that you actually have, but then that tension between solving your own problem, but then also actually being receptive to feedback, making contact with the market, finding product market fit, all very complex. But a big idea that I think is important is, we've seen two examples of marketing agencies building software. Example number one is like, they build something that is completely disconnected from their service offering. So it's really this kind of moonshot that if it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And sometimes this is an extension of like, a client hired us to build this thing and we own the IP. So we're going to like try to turn it into this more fleshed out thing. And then you have an example like yours, where it's like, we were delivering a service and an outcome to a client, and we started building technology to leverage our own process. And that to me is something I think we're going to see a lot more of, even for software companies that want to bootstrap and de-risk their execution. Is their first product will be a service, and then they will find product market fit by essentially leveraging that service with technology. And the reason I think that that's a really powerful idea is because even if the highest risk thing fails, which is we fail to make this commercializable and we fail to find product market fit against a broad swath of users, then we'll still be successful ideally in leveraging our own process with technology, which will make our process more efficient. It'll improve our margins. It'll make it more predictable. It'll increase the enterprise value of our service business, right? So there's kind of this golden parachute that is built into that idea of like, we're going to use a service as the tip of the spear, and then we're going to build behind that using software. Still lots of nuance in terms of how you found product market fit, but like that's what we've done at Parakeeto. It sounds like that's kind of to an extent what you did at Funnelytics. And I think it's a really powerful concept, and it dramatically de-risks what is extremely risky. Finding product market fit is hard and it's risky, and you just don't know how long it's going to take. It took us 4 years. I think we're pretty smart people at Parakeeto, my co-founder and I. I know that we're not incompetent, but it still took us 4 years. That's a long time. That's a very long time.
It's really, really hard. Product market fit, like the thing with services, or anytime you get to speak to a client, is when you can, and you can iterate on it. Like, so when you sell courses, when you sell services, like you can iterate on that feedback in real time, right? Like the next client, the next thing can take, fine, we'll change our onboarding this way, and we'll do this, and we'll add this. Oh, people didn't get that. We'll change this. Okay. But when you're doing software, it doesn't work that way. First of all, you have all of this upfront cost where I got to map out what that feature is. I got to figure out how we're going to build it, and we got to then get it designed and prototyped, and we got to get it then actually in front of the market and launch the beta of it, get a few feedback, and then we got to go through that whole cycle again. And that doesn't mean that you have a fit. You may be like, oh, nobody really cares about this feature. This feature has been useless. I don't know how many features we've launched in Funnelytics. Man, probably, I don't know, too many, where it's like, again, it didn't hit, it didn't work. Like people gave feedback on it, they wanted it, they talked about it, but then you go and build it and it's like, nope, didn't really work the way that I was hoping it worked. So people aren't necessarily using it, right? But that cycle takes a lot of resources, because engineers can't just snap their fingers and this feature is live. No, we got to spend the next 3 to 6 months figuring out how to make sure to build this MVP, right? It may not take that long, but you can't afford that, and it could take a long time, like you say.
Man, we made that mistake. That's the reason it took us 4 years to find product market fit. There's a couple big insights I'll just second on this, right? So the other thing that's punishing about what you just described is the more you build, the slower it gets. This is a thing that my co-founder Ben today says all the time, right? Which is every feature starts with negative value, because the second you ship that new feature, you have more code that needs to get dealt with when you ship a new feature, more dependencies, more things to consider in architecture. It's using up resources, it's confusing the user experience, and it doesn't come out of that debt until it's been discovered, used, and delivered value consistently for users. So your first incentive is to build as little as possible. Then the other thing that's true about this cycle, right, is to your point, it's like, how quickly can you realistically build and ship a feature? Maybe once a week, probably closer to like every 2 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
So
once a week is really hard.
Yeah. Like these would be very small incremental changes, right? But realistically, when you start to take into account UI, UX feedback, testing, the several iterations on that feature you'll probably have to do until it's actually like solving the problem that you want to solve, you're talking a matter of weeks. So let's say optimistically, you can get a feature out every 2 weeks. That gives you 26 opportunities per year, 26 shots on goal to find product market fit. If you can change your process every day because you have under-engineered your solution via services, you could do 300 iterations per year. So if we know that finding product market fit is basically a brute force engineering project, which company has the higher likelihood of finding product market fit? It's clearly the one that can iterate faster. And the problem that we had early on is we went to building software way too early, and it like dramatically slowed down our ability to find product market fit, to iterate, to actually understand the process that repeatedly solved a client's solution, so we could then leverage that process with technology, which is really all it is. So it's like a question of what's the best medium for solving the problem. And to your point, services are so much more malleable, and it takes a lot of discipline, and it's very uncomfortable to sit there longer than you feel like you should, even when you feel like, I know for sure I'm right about this. But over time, you learn to have that discipline because you learn that you're wrong about those assumptions most of the time, right? And that's the wisdom, is like, I know that I think I'm right, but I'm also experienced enough to know that I probably am not.
Yeah. And I think that wisdom, that's key of what you just said. Like, it's like, it goes from like, when you first started off as an entrepreneur, and especially in the software game, it's like, like you say, I know I'm right. Like, this is the right feature. This is exactly what people want. This is what I want. I'm right, 100%. And then a year goes by, 2 years go by, and that tone is like, I think I'm right. And then like next year goes by, and you're like, I don't know if I'm right, but let's give it a shot. Like, and like everything goes to like, yeah, no, it probably is wrong, but based on all the feedback, based on all of these, estimates and these hypotheses and whatever, this is our best, shot at the board, right? So let's go and give that a shot and let's keep moving. Now, a lot of times too, I will say, we do this in the software game, but we also do this in the marketing game. This is in general, most people do this, is you do something, you launch it, and you expect it to hit right away, and you don't iterate. You don't improve. It's like on the marketing funnel. It's like, okay, great. You launch a market, you build all these emails and these assets and use these landing pages and you create these videos and you're like, okay, I'm done. Hit the live button. Oh, I didn't make any money. All right, well, let's move on to the next one then. Let's keep going. Let's jump to the next strategy, as opposed to, wait, no. It's not that it didn't work. It's that there's a bottleneck here, or something's not quite hitting. So we got to tweak it and iterate and keep improving on it. And I did this mistake when I launched Funnelytics in the early days. I mean, to some degree, I still do this mistake, but I'm a little bit more aware of it now, where you just launch a feature in the first version that you think is like, okay, yep, it's done, cool, launch. And then you start looking at your roadmap and you start, okay, let's go and start tackling the next thing, right? And so the engineers start building the next thing. We start designing the next thing. Meanwhile, this other thing's starting to get feedback and you're starting to realize, oh, actually, it's not quite working the way we wanted it to. Yeah, but we already started working on this new thing. So let's just finish this new thing and we'll come back to this old thing in the future, right? And that's just a mindset you've got to get super disciplined around.
I'm glad you brought this full circle because, yeah, these principles apply to everything, and they apply to service design, they apply to product design, they apply to marketing, iteration, and you described something that is very similar to the insight that I had, which is like, I spent the first 4 years at Parakeeto trying to prove myself right. And the day that I decided I actually needed to prove myself wrong as fast as possible, it's a very nuanced mindset shift, but it changed absolutely everything for my business. And it sounds like in different words, you had the very same kind of shift over time, which was like, instead of trying to prove myself right about this idea, I need to try and destroy this idea as quickly as possible. And instead of being afraid of being wrong, I need to like figure that out as quickly as I can so I don't waste time on the wrong things. And it's like, once you become comfortable with that and you acknowledge that like you're going to be wrong, so let's like get that out of the way as quickly as we can. It's subtle, but it's huge. And I think that is a really good principle to apply across the entire business, across services, across marketing, across everything. And really kind of take this scientific approach of like, I have a thesis. The goal is to invalidate that thesis.
That's so powerful, man. I'm not gonna lie. Like, even just hearing you say it in that way, it even hits hard. Even though I've gone through the trenches and on both running an agency and also this other thing, this software, it's still very much an impressive way to put it, right? It's like, yeah, it's not about proving yourself right. It's not about your own ego. It's actually about, as quickly as possible, proving yourself wrong, because then you can move and say, actually, yep, this is wrong. This idea that I think is potentially genius is actually wrong. Let's prove that it's wrong, right? How quickly can we do that is important.
Yeah, it's like the old saying, right? Prioritization is deprioritization, and so I think finding the path forward with product market fit, a lot of the time, it's more about closing doors than it is about finding the right one to walk through. So,
Yep.
With all of that, I know we're getting to time here. For those that want to learn more about you, Funnelytics, follow you online, where should we send them in the show notes?
Yeah, so Mikael Dia on LinkedIn. That's where I post most of my stuff, and best way to connect with me. I stopped using Facebook a long time ago, or any other social media, to be honest. So LinkedIn, and then funnelytics.io if you want to learn more about our platform.
Awesome. So links to both of those in the show notes if you're listening. And Mikael, Always enjoy chatting with you, man. Thank you for coming on.
Likewise, brother. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you've ever found yourself thinking, man, I get so much value from this podcast, I wish there was something I could do to return the favor. Well, today's your lucky day because you can leave us a review wherever you're listening to this, and it is incredibly helpful. Of course, if you haven't grabbed a free copy of the Agency Profit Toolkit, go and get that. It's got tons of free resources to help you improve your profitability. If you're looking to get in the fast lane and get help from experts to improve your profitability and measure your most important metrics, then apply for a consultation at Parakeeto.com. We'd love to chat with you and figure out how we can help. With all of that, thank you so much for being a listener, and we will see you on the next episode.